Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 6th June 2020, and these are the couple of articles we'll be dealing today. The first article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled A Right Time to Shift Pharma Gears. If we take a look at our collective history, medicines are probably the greatest invention for the survival of mankind. So in this context, if we ask a fundamental question, whether the world was ready to handle this COVID-19 pandemic, the answer is a very clear no. The reason is the world has not equitably invested on healthcare across the globe. So in this context, there is a need for an institutional reform, say something like a fund, or the author proposes in this case a fund called the Health Impact Fund, which will better suit the needs of the world to handle a crisis like COVID-19. So this fund is an institutional reform that is proposed by the writer to create a regime for developing and marketing new pharma products. If we take a look at the share of pharma industry in the world gross domestic product, it is just 1.7%. However, nearly 50 to 55% of the amount spent in the pharma industry goes towards branding. One major problem of the pharma industry across the world is sometimes in countries like US we see almost 10,000% increase in the cost of production. The rationale behind this is pharmaceutical companies spend years and years in research and development of that particular drug. Now they incur a lot of costs in this process, the cost of clinical trials, the cost of failure, and the cost of the research personnel involved in this process. All these costs should be covered and there should be some amount of profit that is available for the company that is investing in R&D. Therefore, this is the rationale. But in this process, we also have to remember that pricing the drugs at such a high price will make it out of reach for the bottommost rung of the ladder. And when we are talking about a pandemic like COVID-19, even it affects the lowest rung of the ladder, even the rest of the society will have to bear the brunt of this economic slowdown. Therefore, there is a necessity for sharing this responsibility across the world. There are some reasons quoted by the author as to why there should be a health impact fund for funding research and development, especially with respect to healthcare and those which are neglected by corporate companies. Let us have a look at these concerns one by one. First concern is that most of the companies will ignore the tropical neglected diseases. There are 20 diseases which are presented by the World Health Organization. These diseases will affect the bottommost rung of the ladder in our society, where poor people who cannot afford medicine will be affected by this. So most of the companies will not invest any money on the medicines for these sector. So these diseases are very much avoidable, yet we see a case where at least 1 billion people are affected in some way or the other every single year. To statistically present this point, the author quotes a statistic where he says that just 0.12% of the R&D spending in the industry is devoted to tuberculosis and malaria, which kill nearly 1.7 lakh people each year. The second concern is, despite the cost of manufacturing being very low, the price is very high because of the reasons that we have mentioned before, and the companies will have to cover up that cost. It is for this reason that we have to invest in health infrastructure fund or health impact fund as proposed by the author. So low production cost is not reflected in the prices. That is the biggest problem. The next one is, another issue is in the present patents framework, there are many companies which create namesake therapeutic value based drugs and market them with billions of dollars and get that money back. So we have, say for example, multivitamin tablets being sold at a very high cost, even though there are much cheaper generic variants. So these type of drugs or these type of pharmaceutical products have no therapeutic value, and yet they earn billions of dollars. So these kind of drugs should also be addressed. So to address all these problems, we have to create the health impact fund, as each and every government will contribute towards the research and development of these products. So these will be like global commons. Going forward, this health impact fund should have a fixed percentage of GDP or national income, whatever may be the case, for contribution towards this particular fund. So every country must devote some amount of money towards HIF. So are we actually suggesting that we have to completely alienize private sector R&D? No, that is not the purpose of this fund. So what exactly are we trying to say is, we have to find those private investors who are willing to work on R&D projects which are generally considered not feasible for companies to economically produce drugs in a long term. So this fund will fund those kind of R&D projects. That is how we are going to make even the private sector partners in our development. So as and when this particular idea sees more fruits, we can extend this logic to even diagnostic tests and various other therapies as well. So this will trigger a fundamental shift in the thought process of many companies as well. So till now, most of the companies would be worried about how to recover their high research and development costs. Now all that they would be worried about is to ensure that they focus upon overall disease burden as effectively as possible, and the research and development funds will be taken care by governments itself. That is the win-win situation that this article is talking about. But this requires a lot of political commitment, and it should be coming from one of the most developed countries where capitalists play a huge lobby. That is the gist of this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Indian Express, and it is written by our principal economic advisor, and this tries to explain the philosophy of Atmanirbhar Bharat and what do we mean by the idea of self-reliance. So there is a confusion whenever we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is self-reliance and resilience, along with the call for local goods. Many people thought that this is a sort of a revamped version of the pre-LPG era, where protectionism was exhibited by our socialist economy. So let us try to understand some fundamental differences between how the post-independent India dealt with our economy, that is from 1947 to 1991, when the LPG reforms era began. So right now we are not talking about the return to a socialistic era where everything is controlled by the state. It is exactly the opposite. We are calling for more and more privatization to trigger economic growth. So let us have a brief understanding of the pre-LPG era. So after 1947, we have had finally attained independence from the British rule. The Britishers who came into India in 1600s as a trading company, that is a private company, and eventually they have carried forward the legacy of mercantilism, capitalism, imperialism, and India has seen the worst of all those philosophies, and that reason has stopped India from encouraging foreign capital. Therefore, after 1947, there was no concept of FDI, there was no concept of private companies from abroad. As a result, what happened was we were focusing on self-reliance, but there was no room for innovation, given the fact that most of our economy is based on agriculture. So the pace of industrial production or industrial development has been very slow, and this along with the license Raj era. That is, for every sector there were certain government regulations abiding by which we have to start a new company. Now these license norms were so strict that it would leave no incentive for the private sector to produce within the country. As a result, there have been no jobs, there has been no competition, and this has led to what economists called during that time as Hindu rate of growth. Now, what is this Hindu rate of growth? This Hindu rate of growth is GDP growth around 2 to 3%. At the same time, China started to liberalize its economy in the 1980s and has seen a tremendous increase in its GDP growth rate. Every year, it has seen nearly 7, 8, and 9, or even 10% GDP growth rate and has grown its capacities multifold. In contrast, India has remained more or less very stagnant, and India has not breached this 5% economic growth level till 1991. Not many times. There were certain other occasions where India did grow beyond 5%, but there are very limited cases where we exhibited this growth rate. And as a result, we had to open up our economy in 1991 because we had a balance of payment crisis, and it was imperative for India to open up its economy and deregulate a lot of sectors. As a result, instead of manufacturing sector in India, service sector grew multifold, and that is the reason why most of the jobs or IT sector has developed so well in our country. But given the fact that we have huge population, there is only a limited possibility for IT sector to create so many jobs. So eventually we'll have to go back to manufacturing sector, and that is the reason why India or the government after its election in 2014 has focused upon the Make in India campaign. The reason why Make in India campaign has seen little success despite FDI flows is because of the fact that we don't have skilled labor, we don't have economic reforms, and land, labor, and other economic reforms like say adjudication in judiciary or adjudication in courts or insolvency issues have been one of the major reasons. Also, availability of capital through institutional credit has taken a hit because of the NPA problem. All these problems have led to a stagnant growth in our economy, and this COVID-19 pandemic has forced the country to take some radical reforms and focus upon agricultural sector along with manufacturing sector. So when the government announced that it is going to infuse 20 lakh crores, this was more like a support project or a liquidity project rather than a package that is meant to infuse stimulus, financial stimulus. This was more like a liquidity package. So what the government has done in this case is it introduced a set of supply chain reforms or supply side reforms to ensure that businesses find it very easy to set up companies and at the same time create more number of jobs. So it is encouraging the industry and thereby ensuring that there is a multiplier effect, because in the longer run the government cannot handle this crisis alone without the help of private sector creating more and more number of jobs. So it has carried out various reforms, like MSME sector has got a lot of liquidity, and at the same time there have been measures to revamp the agricultural sector. Some of the landmark reforms include deregulating agricultural sector by introducing amendments to the Essential Commodities Act, as well as removing the APMC Act, which forced the farmer to sell his agricultural produce in a very restrained geography. So this problem of middlemen can be eliminated by implementing this law in its spirit. So this is just a starting point and a lot needs to be done. So it is in this context that you have to differentiate between the idea of self-reliance when we are talking in the pre-LPG era and the idea of self-reliance now. In the pre-LPG era, there was no encouragement for FDI, there was no encouragement for foreign capital or foreign technology, and thereby it resulted in a slowdown in our economy. Now, when we are focusing on self-reliance, it does not mean that we are discouraging foreign capital, foreign technology, or foreign goods. That would be protectionism. We are not advocating protectionism. We are actually advocating what we call as self-reliance, or building capacities, or empowering the Indian industry with skill and capital from foreign companies. So, what is the incentive for foreign companies? We are offering cheap labor, we are offering cheap land, and all the other factors of production. So by offering these factors of production, we are also giving them huge scope for domestic market. India is one of the largest markets for any sort of product that is produced globally, if we empower the citizens with better economic incentives. So having said all this, the emphasis is not completely on privatization and creating a laissez-faire state. No, we are not trying to do that. We are actually aiming to increase our tax base. Aim is to increase our tax base and tax revenue, and ensure that through these tax we go for income redistribution. This income redistribution should be equitable. Only when this equitable growth happens, we can actually realize the concept of human rights and human development. But this human development should be starting at economic growth, because without growth, human development cannot happen. Without growth, redistribution cannot happen. So these are like two aspects of the concept of development. First, we have to ensure growth, and then we have to ensure redistribution and therefore economic development. So how do we achieve this growth? There are two schools of thought. First school of thought is wherein you directly put money into the hands of the people, and this will lead to increase in consumption. So this consumption will actually trigger an economic growth. However, there is a concept called middle income trap. That is, countries cannot grow beyond a point if we continue to grow with the help of this consumption. So this is the idea behind ensuring that we are creating capacities rather than just consuming more and more, to avoid this middle income trap, as said in economic survey last year, and also to ensure that redistribution happens through equitable tax resources distribution, and thereby encouraging the idea of human development. That is the philosophy of Atmanirbhar. This is a very important topic for our essay as well as our mains exam this year. So please prepare this topic comprehensively. That's it for the day. Thank you.